Welcome to Full Throttle Talk, the podcast where horsepower meets conversation. From supercars to classic legends, high revving tech to motorsport mayhem, we cover it all. Straight from the driver's seat, whether you're a gearhead or racer or just love the thrill of the open road, you're in the right place. Buckle up, hit the gas, and let's go full throttle into today's episode.
Great. Well, if you're listening to this podcast, there's a high probability you already know automotive journalist Matt Farah and listen to his podcast or watch his YouTube channel. If not, you most definitely need to. He is the automotive renaissance man. As a graduate of Penn with a degree in photography, Matt has gone on to become the OG of automotive podcasts with one of the first and most listened to one called The Smoking Tire with his co-host Zach Clapman. He's also one of the first automotive YouTube content providers, and his channels far surpass 1 million subscribers. He's been an automotive TV host on NBC Sports, Esquire, and he is currently the editor-at-large for Road and Track magazine. He also has built, owns, and operates the automotive storage and concierge solution empire here in Southern California called West Side Collector Car Storage. Besides being a voracious reader, he's a certified Benihana chef, watch aficionado, top-tier cat owner, and one of the smartest and kindest humans I've met, and I am proud to call him my friend. Folks, here is Matt Farah.
Wow. Thanks, Paul. I've never actually sat through my resume being read back to me. So that's okay. Yeah, I did some of those things.
Benihana chef isn't on your IMDb, though.
That part is true, and I think I'm going to make sure Road and Track adds it to the masthead because it's far more interesting than whatever's on there now.
Awesome.
Well, we've got a lot of great background.
Hi.
We've got a lot of background questions that actually Paul helped us write. And then we have a lot of very car specific questions. A lot of the car specific questions, Matt, we took from listener questions over on Instagram. So we're going to just jump in. We're going to use Paul's questions first, because I'm really interested in what some of your answers will be, especially the third question. Evidently you've got it out for Paul and you tried to kill him. I'm looking forord to the answer on that one's question 3.
No, he didn't. He didn't try to kill me.
Well,
someone was trying else to kill me.
You can start with that if you like, but yeah, let's go. What do you got? I am prepared for this.
Well, since I'm intimate with that question, it was a few years ago, and driving up to Good Vibes Breakfast Club, often in the morning, you are doing some of your content filming on the Angeles Crest area, and I was driving my 944 Turbo S, and you caught up with me because I think you were driving a 991.2 Turbo S, maybe, or 992 Turbo S. I mean, something I knew was remarkably faster, and you're a far better driver. And so there's a part of the crest we came to where we affectionately call the Palmdale 500, which is the commuters zipping over the other side, and they often go over the yellow line, which is a big no-no. And we had a near brush with death. And the irony is I was pulling over to let you go by because you're faster in all respects. And I think you thought I pulled over because I was crapping my pants.
Basically, you really breezed over what the actual thing, which is that a Suburban had tried to make a double yellow pass in an area where you forget what's painted on the road. Common sense says you should never ever try to make a pass in a straightaway that is so short. I mean, it was like we're talking like 100 yards. And so, yeah, a guy tried to make a pass and I was coming the other way, and it ended with there were 3 cars in an area where there should have been 2, and it was kind of a disaster. But it's funny that, like, people really, like, in the general public, really like crap on car enthusiasts for like enjoying the canyons. And like, there is an argument there because one could argue that driving rapidly is unsafe. However, I think that the vast majority of people that enjoy the canyons recreationally out in the middle of nowhere, particularly those that are up there on weekdays, are incredibly passionate car enthusiasts that take driving seriously. And I have seen far more dangerous driving from commuters coming the other way. There's that one area by the Big Tahunga Dam, the Overlook, where I shoot a lot of the YouTube thumbnails because there's a really good framing there with morning light. And the number of sketchy double yellow passes, dive bombing people into I mean, it's multiple times a day. So like, yeah, there's the most dangerous stuff. You see a guy in a box truck just like downhill, loaded up, and then it does that little hop with the live axle dually in the back. It's that, and yeah, that's a pretty regular
Yeah.
occurrence.
And I'm sure they're all on
Don't die.
Michelin 4S's all matched.
Oh yeah, retreads, baby. It's all about.
Yeah.
Did you know you can retread? I just learned now.
Oh,
Yeah, they're all in the retreads.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, just going on that subject, I've heard your infamous story, which I think you just posted something with the guy dragging the log behind. Someone
Yeah,
else.
that's like 2015 or 2016, maybe. Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
almost threw the video away. Yeah.
What was the
even
story
going-
with that?
Yeah,
Why was he
There
doing
isn't
that?
a story beyond. I mean, it's not like I ever like talked to the person. He was just like a guy who had to get a big log from one place to another and like was too dumb to think of literally any better way to do it than the way he did it. And the way he did it was just like so comically dangerous, which is just to free drag it on like a 50, 60-foot chain.
It looked like a
down a very
medieval.
windy road.
It looked like some medieval fighting weapon.
Yeah, it was like Looney Tunes stuff. Like it was crazy. Like you can't like unless you're like literally like trying to see
Yeah.
what damage you can do by doing this. I can't see any reason for doing it that isn't either like you have one brain cell left or you're like a malignant narcissist and we need to like keep you away from other people
Or both.
certainly away from cars. Yeah, it's crazy. Go watch the video. It was wild.
You bring up driving roads, and it just occurred to me, we didn't have this question, guys, but you've driven on, it has to be all the best driving roads in America. So if you,
I mean, the boilerplate ones, all the
Right.
locals like to email me. You didn't do Route 34D-12. Oh, yeah, they get real mad about that. But like, certainly all the ones that have fun nicknames, I would say, yeah.
but across the country though, what would you say are the top 3 driving roads? What were the ones that
So my favorite, we do these. What's great about I lead these road and track events and I make the routes and then lead them. And so the whole point is to go all over the country and find great roads. And so that's literally the point of the thing, when you're finding roads that are like good enough, people are willing to pay you to drive them with you. And so to answer the question, I mean, I think countrywide. I think my favorite road in the entire country. Ooh, man, this is tough. I mean, I love certainly top 3. One would be the Cherrahola Skyway,
definitely.
which is adjacent to Tail of the Dragon, but I think it's better than Tail of the Dragon. Tail of the Dragon is a unique experience for sure, but I almost get like nauseous after driving Tail of the Dragon really fast. I get it. And it's a fabulous road, but the Cherrahola Skyway is like Tail of the Dragon was like our like Malibu. Tight, technical, lots of elevation change, heavy cambered braking zones. And the Skyway is more like our Angeles Forest with more open sweepers, an average speed that's probably 20 miles an hour higher, yet less stressful on the body and the car and more beautiful with big sweeping views. I mean, that road is you hit that on a weekday. I mean, life just doesn't get any better than that. It's just epic.
100%.
That's a really, really, really great one.
Matt, have you done 191 in Arizona right along the New Mexico border? They used to call it Devil's Highway because it was US Highway 666, which obviously that
I
down.
haven't. My Arizona is limited to that sort of Sedona, Flagstaff, Phoenix
Yep.
vertical column.
Yeah.
I would say down in South Texas, by Terlingua and Lajitas. That loop right along the Rio Grande, that road, which I think might be Texas 67. It's called
It
like
goes through Big Bend.
Presidio. Yeah, Presidio Highway. I believe that was the last road in North America that was paved before they imposed camber limitations. So
Oh,
the road has this just ridiculous on camber flow to it, and it literally does run, you know, on the Rio Grande. That's absolutely, and there's nobody. I mean,
yeah.
that's as far in the middle of nowhere as I think you can be in America, probably. Um, that's great. I think for like different reasons, um, I like I like driving in Nevada a lot. I think the drive, um, oh, best. I mean, best, man. It might be like going through Glacier National Park, the what's it called? The road to the road going to the Sun Road, the going to the Sun Road, which is one of those like slow but stunningly beautiful ones, you know, like the road through Zion National Park where you come out of the tunnel and you're just like "Rah," in the canyon, or there's some of those roads that are just they happen to be beautiful, but they're very slow, like the PCH through Big Sur. I mean, which has to be mentioned. You hit that at the right time of
Yeah.
day, you know, and it's just the most glorious drive imaginable. Wrong time of day, it's very crowded. I would say that would be my third, is the PCH from San Simeon to Monterey, which just is at the right time of day. I think the best drive you can do in America, and I would do it every single year if Mother Nature allowed me to.
Yeah, I think what most people don't realize is best roads, it depends what you're looking to get out of it. In
Hmm.
some
Hmm.
cases, I just want to see insane vistas and I want to
Yes.
have an open road, but I'm not going to get this dynamic experience. Like 191 is dynamic experience. I call it a 90-mile autocross with no one around, but
Yeah.
there's a chance of some gnarly weather and deer that I swear have an alter ego of being a squirrel. They look for the car and it is
Yeah.
nuts. But but yeah, then you know, I haven't PCH was always frustrating, you know, even when it was open all the way through to Carmel and going by Big Sur because insane views, insane RVs, and you just have to. I mean, the only time I really truly savored it, because when I get on the road, I kind of am just like, let's drive, 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 was when I drove my Citroen SM up to Monterey Car Week, and that car couldn't do it wasn't a dynamic experience. So all I
Hmm.
could was just float around one. And I swear, even though I'd been up and down that road 100 times, I saw more stuff in that car
Yeah.
than ever before.
Well, look,
Hey,
I just
Yeah.
drove cross country in my Taycan at 74 miles an hour, with the cruise control on for 5 days. I could look at many things in great detail. No, but like Pete, you know, I don't know about you guys. I'm like a morning person. I wake up early and I'm go. So, and in that drive to Car Week each year is one of my favorite drives. You want to talk about favorite drives? Going from LA to Car Week on the Wednesday in what has to be a fabulous car. I wake up at my house in LA at 4 o'clock in the morning. And you know, I have a coffee and I'm going. And I hit the 101 and I'm doing deep triple digits because there ain't nobody up that early in Southern California. The cops are not awake. It doesn't happen. There's no third shift for those people. And so I'm out. And so I catch San Simeon at 6 a.m. And so I've got a sunrise, I've got a mist, and RVs are not even done with breakfast yet. And so I am hitting that 6 a.m., assuming I can get through. And in a Ferrari 328, which was the last time I was able to do it, I mean, the perfect speed, the perfect car for that because it's all in third gear and it's just steering, gas, and brake pretty much. And you can go fast enough to have a good time. You get the top down and the world around you, and you're out there. And then I get to the edge of Big Sur. I like to do it on the Wednesday or the Thursday. If I do it on the Thursday, I stop for breakfast. I catch the Tour de Elegance going the other way. So I'm in that game, and then it's just the greatest. from leaving early, flying, PCH, breakfast, and then the Tour de Elegance comes to me. I mean, there is no more welcome to Car Week motivator than that. I mean, that's like shooting up some, race gas right here. Let's go.
We did a podcast a couple of weeks ago where Paul had a funny topic: how to do Car Week on $25 a day.
Mhm. I mean, it can actually be done, and you can have a great time.
Absolutely.
I've seen people do it a bunch. I did it real cheap the first year I was there, also, and the amount of things that you can do there for free are very high. Yeah, most of the really good stuff does not cost money, particularly
Yeah.
the Tour d'Elegance.
And
And
some
a Tour
things,
d'Elegance is my favorite by far.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, me too.
and some
Yeah,
things cost all the money. The quail's
yeah,
getting
and
super
I wouldn't pay
expensive,
it.
and
I would never. I mean, all those crazy expensive Pebble Beach things. Like, it's for me. I wouldn't pay that, but like, I'm fortunate. I'm in the industry, and going to stuff like that, hard to work.
for you. Hey,
I'm not
Paul,
complaining. I'm not complaining. I like
Paul,
my job very much.
your second question was really good. If you think it's appropriate to ask that.
Oh,
Anything that you've sent me, you pre-sent me questions. I glanced over them while drunk, and
Well,
while drunk, I found that they were all fine. So
so,
just go
so
ahead.
just so you have some background, you know Paul, you and I only know each other mostly through business and being, becoming friends. Greg's got an interesting background. He was in a different business. He's gotten full time in the car business. And so we have a lot of folks, and I would never have thought this in a million years, that are listening to us that are, well, first of all, they're not in the car business, but a lot of them are trying to figure out ways to get into the car business, or they're trying, it's their
Because
fantasy.
it's fun,
Well,
right?
exactly. I mean, and like the Magnus Walker, thing. He kind of like set the stage for you. The fact that you can kind of create this persona and make yourself famous inside the car
Has
space.
anyone
And
asked Magnus how much he makes doing car stuff? That might be a good question to ask him,
I'm gonna
because
guess
yeah,
I know
nothing.
the answer,
as
and
do
it's
I.
zero.
Yeah.
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 It's
Well, I
So yeah,
his
like
lost leader.
Magnus is super recognizable, but like
Yeah.
that he doesn't make any money doing that.
well,
He's a commercial real estate landlord. That's his gig.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Um,
Just a really good looking one with a lot of
you know,
cool cars.
and a cool wife
and
and dog.
inspiring
Yeah. Yeah,
and in,
Hannah's lovely too.
inspiring this question was, and sometimes you need a friend or a family to kind of just say, like, do you know what's going on? Like, I remember within 5 years of opening up Auto Kennel, which has now been 20 years, my
Mhm.
mom, my mom is not into cars. I do this with my dad. It's his retirement hobby. But my mom came into our shop and she sees kind of what you see in the background. And she doesn't never really got what we were doing at first, but she looked at it and she's like, can you imagine when you're 7, 8, 9, 10 years old and this picture you knew was going to be your reality? And
Yeah.
you just get your head so deep into the minutia. I I always think about that and I force myself to step back. But like for you, what was your moment? You looked at it and you're like, man, I'm doing all this work. And you go, was it when you broke ground on the building? Was it
No,
when
I mean
someone
there's
said
the
something?
I mean there's a couple like real obvious ones. I mean, being on the masthead at Road and Track,
Hmm.
which was the magazine I read growing up. That to me is actually the most sort of like writing is the most rewarding thing that I do. If I had to just do one part of the automotive business, based on passion alone, it would be writing. Um, for a variety of reasons, but writing for Road and Track, and when I was a kid reading that magazine, when I was 5 or 6 or 8 or whatever, um, the idea that one could grow up and write reviews of supercars for Road and Track, you might have said, grow up to be Superman. I mean, that wasn't a possible thing. That was never like whoever those people were that got to do that, they were clearly special, because that's not a thing for normal regular people. And so, the when YouTube became a thing and the idea of self-publishing became a thing, and being able to do it on your own without anybody, quote, gatekeeping or having to approve you, that was a revelation for me and a lot of other people, that maybe would have been passed over for television, or that maybe wouldn't have been hired for those jobs, because I wasn't a great writer. It's not like I have some enormous writing background that I'm so good at writing. It's only once I developed a voice for videos and just started writing like I talk, but more concise and better edited and with a better crafted argument. Well, it turns out that's what good writing is. And so it was easier to go from being a known person for video back to writing. If you see people who start as writers and then try to do video, you can kind of tell that that's what's gone on there. So whereas someone who started, whereas if you read, for example, Jeremy Clarkson's Times column, you can picture in your head as you're reading it, Jeremy Clarkson is reading that to you. He doesn't need to be there doing it. That's what my writing is like. And I hear that a lot from people. And that's a very rewarding thing. I've been able to type in my own voice, but better than I could do it if I was talking to you now, more concise with better metaphors and all kind of stuff. So being able to actually, and also it's like, when you're self-publishing, you never have to answer the question of like, would anybody ever hire me to do this? Like, yes, I can hustle my way through this, and if I have to do side gigs, it's for the best, and I can grind it out and whatever. But am I good enough that a company of note would hire me to do it in the way that they've hired those other people? And so the validation of the job, the fact that it's from that publication, the doors that that business card opens, the fact that I have there isn't one on my desk, but a physical print thing that will, in theory last forever. And to go back to it, my dad understands me being in the magazine. My dad, he understands YouTube now, but he understands Matt Farah, editor at large, and then I've got 3 or 4 stories in there. He understands that. And so that to me is incredibly rewarding, because it's just sort of layers of validation. And oh, by the way, I enjoy working there. That too.
Did the automotive influencers, because now obviously the automotive information is just everywhere. It's nowhere near the
Yeah.
quality as it was, like when you're writing and whatnot. But did they kind of trash the whole formalized automotive magazines? Because those magazines have gotten so thin. There's no advertisers for them anymore.
Well, I mean, look, first off, fewer people want to deal with print. I understand why I like print, for the same reason that I don't use my notes app in my phone. I have a literal physical book of handwritten, both sides. This is 1 year, this notebook. I like analog things. There's other people that like digital things. And so if all you want to do is get news and car reviews and things like that, consumer advice, then the internet is a much better resource, which explains why a magazine like Car and Driver, which is heavily consumer influenced, is shrinking, right? Whereas other magazines, like for instance, my friends at Avance magazine, or my friends at the Road Rat magazine, or us at Road and Track, are publishing with higher quality paper, more storytelling, photography that's given room to breathe, and have sort of turned the magazine into what it probably should be in 2025, which is a more niche luxury product for people that are very enthusiastic about the people that are telling those stories and what stories they choose to tell. I don't mind the death of a car and driver in print, as long as the car and driver's online presence is enough to keep my friends employed. That's really what I care about, even though I know that some of them are very proud to write for a print magazine as well. But yeah, I mean, the print magazine business is dying. Road and Track is doing a variety of things to try and fend that off by moving the product upscale, and by doing these events, which are now part of my job, making the routes and leading. I I didn't necessarily dream of working for Road and Track to do customer service on luxury driving tours. Fortunately, my other business, I'm in a luxury customer service business. So it doesn't bother me at all. It's just another day at the office, being nice to rich folks
Yeah.
for one thing or another. But a lot of people who got into the business to review cars might be all like, wait, we're leading this rally of like these random people now, and I'm a customer service representative, like, and they might be turned off by that. But personally, I think those are pretty easy days at the office, driving a great car on great roads and sharing that experience with people that are very happy to be there who may have some questions about things. So, that doesn't bother me at all.
And Matt, you mentioned really quickly that obviously the magazine business has changed. We've all watched it, even if we're
Yeah.
not in it for the last 10 years. I hear
Yeah.
you talk about this on your podcast. I mean, are we at the same, at the sort of the beginning, the origin of the YouTube sort of experience also changing?
I mean, yeah, like, look, YouTube, it seems trite for me to be all like the algorithm, but the bottom line is for me and for a lot of other people who have been doing this a very long time, YouTube squeezes tighter and tighter and forces you to dance around this shifting algorithm, right? You had we the way to attract viewers and to gain a following and to entertain and educate your following has changed three or four significant ways since I started doing this. And we don't need to go into depth about what those specific changes are. If you, like Paul, have been following me for a long time, you've seen them. We've had to adapt for them or have tried to adapt for them. Um, I mean, but the bottom line is like most YouTube videos are not worth making, which is truly unfortunate. I mean, most of the videos that I make in the year 2025 are literally not worth making. Like they take more time and energy than they bring in. And that's extremely unfortunate. And you know, there will be a point where they're truly not worth making for a consistent period of time, and we may have to make a difficult decision. The podcast is worth making. It's non-algorithmic. If you subscribe to it, you get it. I don't have to fly to Spain for 4 days. Now, I love Spain. I'm not I don't mind the travel for the job, but to spend 4 days on one video plus editing is ridiculous when I could make the same video in 4 hours here in Los Angeles and the audience doesn't care. So podcasting and writing, flying to another country to drive a car when the goal is to come away with a written piece versus when you're by yourself and have to deliver a finished video is an enormously different experience on that trip. And without, burning the bridge that fed me per se, I'm not passionate about making videos the way I was 10 or 15 years ago. It's just not the landscape. It's a way for me to reach my audience. I get it. I get that I'm reasonably okay at it. But there's a reason actors aren't operating camera and calling action. You know what I mean? There's a reason that on a set people usually have a job or maybe two jobs, but like when I'm hosting the video, driving, have to learn and deliver the information and also do all the cameras and all the audio, and you have one chance, you get 4 laps on a racetrack, and you're trying to keep up with Jörg Bergmeister in a GT3 RS, and oh, by the way, is my audio working? It's just like versus having the experience for real, right? Not not pretending for the camera. I mean, really having it and taking notes afterwards, and then crafting a great metaphor that aligns your experience with someone who's never had that experience can relate to it. You know what I mean?
We do.
But yeah,
It is worth mentioning because I know there's some people out there that are budding content creators to the automotive space. And
yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, but for every 1,000 views, or no, I'm sorry, for every million views on YouTube, basically it's like you might earn $5 grand in revenue from ads.
5 grand's a little high.
Wow. It's shocking, isn't
Yeah,
it? Yeah.
yeah. It was. I've seen as high, like back in the day, it might have been like 10 or 12. is about as high as it ever was. But it's not, there's layers, right? It's like there's the YouTube revenue, and then there's also ads that, I do. Hey guys, check out this coffee cup, whatever. And those ads that I do are often 2 or 3x whatever YouTube themselves will pay us. And so if there's a lot of people that like to complain about the presence of ads, but if you don't see them, that's when you should be worried. You
Absolutely.
shouldn't be happy, like, oh, good. Those
Yeah.
those pesky ads are gone. Like, well, that's not all that's going to be gone.
Hey, Paul, this is a good time for you to do the Viagra ad. If you want to slip that
Yeah.
in right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do too.
absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's funny. I remember Tom Segura talking about the reads and comparing it to like the radio people. And he's like,
Yeah.
you have no idea. This is where the money's at is reads of ads that align with what you want to do or who you're reaching.
Well, yeah, we're reaching men, so all of our ads are like men's products and stuff like that. Which I'm happy to do ads. I love doing ads. Ads mean money, and we don't,
Absolutely.
while I don't necessarily use every product that we do advertise, I test every product that we advertise, and I would never advertise anything that I didn't think somebody could find a good bit of use for.
I
And
mean,
there's a lot of stuff I say. Believe me, there is a lot. I mean, it's always nice when people refer to me as like some kind of good entrepreneur. But the fact is, I'm not that good of an entrepreneur. I overpay my employees. I'm way too nice to them. I take care of too many fucking people. My priorities are not profit; they're quality of life and long-term happiness based. And yeah, I'm not that good of an entrepreneur, and I leave so much money on the table by not advertising to a level of garbage that a lot
yeah.
of people will happily advertise to.
Oh, I said there's only two jobs I would do if I wasn't doing this. I'd work for you or work at Disneyland Park like I did when I was in school.
Yeah.
Where quality of life was just how good a quality of a job. And I'm always when I listen to what you have going, I get I get like heart palpitations of the volume of work you take on. And it seems like you've got all these
Um,
different revenue streams, which is why we're honored to have you spend some time with us.
Well,
But
it's
like,
four. It's four, and some of them are symbiotic and overlap, right?
right,
So, like, there's a lot of times where I could go on that same press launch in Spain, and I can get my monthly road and track column and a video, and then it's content for a podcast and blah blah blah. Having the shop, Westside Collector Car Storage, even though that is, a 2 location, 7 day a week brick and mortar business, which was a new thing for me. uh Even having that, it benefits the smoking tire because press cars can get dropped off and picked up, boxes can be sent here, fans. I mean, the benefit of not having to operate a small business like that out of my house or on my own is very big. So there is a lot of benefits. Yeah, but also I have a problem.
yeah, but like, I mean, I don't know if you remember, but maybe when you're back at school in Penn, and I felt this when I was in school. It's like, man, and working multiple jobs, going to school, like if I could just have one thing to take
Yeah,
all of my focus. You mentioned briefly writing would be it. Would you just
yeah.
be a Peter Iger just sitting in a room writing? What would it be
No,
if
I
it
mean, look, I
wasn't
have
writing?
to. You have to stay busy, right?
Yeah.
You gotta. Even my father has attempted to retire. And you've met my dad, Paul, so you know. I think I don't, Tim. I don't think you met my dad, but Paul certainly.
I've listened to him on your
Uh,
podcast before, and I
so
loved it. Yeah.
yeah, so he's tried to retire like 6 times, and he's the worst retiree you've ever seen. He just cannot, he can't do it. And so, I'm gonna head that off by basically planning to never retire, right? And if I were to have my goal, what's the goal? Well, maybe in 10 years, if I could have 4 or 5 of these, right? And I could have a fabulous life with a fabulous income. That's my wife and I don't have kids. That's more than enough to support us and anything we want to do. I could write at whatever leisure I felt like. I could podcast at whatever leisure I felt like. and none of those things would ever require a retirement.
Yeah.
You know,
Like Harry's
how great would
garage.
that be? Wouldn't that be awesome? And have like 20 or 30 employees who could pay their mortgages and have health insurance, and then they could have kids and maybe buy a house, and have like a business that like supported a whole bunch of people living their lives. Like, wouldn't that be nice? Like, let's just do that.
You realize the
Um,
irony, right? The irony is you are in the commercial real estate space, and whether those facilities that you've built in or building stay, automotive storage, they're obviously going to have tremendous value in the future, especially where you've positioned these. So you are a
well,
commercial real estate
sure.
investor. And
I
by the
no, I
way,
mean that's totally true. That's totally
yeah,
true. And I think honestly, a lot of people look at the car storage business as being mistakenly either either fun or passive. It is neither. And if you try to do this business in a rental building, boy, are you dumb. I mean, you haven't done any kind of math at all. So obviously, the long play is owning the buildings, owning the land, and the business keeps it all moving. And the business brings in also plenty of income for my family and my employees' families to live off, and that's the goal. But yes, obviously, a portfolio of hopefully desirable commercial real estate is actually the plan.
your sign over your right shoulder is hilarious, by the way. I don't know if you realize we've been
Yeah,
talking about that the whole time.
yeah, it's Herb Kelleher.
Yeah.
My wife got that for me. It's about not overthinking. It says we have a strategic plan. It's called doing things. And so people are like, what's the strategy? And I go, I do today's things today. And then tomorrow I'm going to do tomorrow's things. And then, and then eventually, Thursday's things will appear and I'll do those. Like a lot of people, what's your vision board? Like
Yeah.
fucking getting through today, bro.
Yeah. A
Amen.
lot of people ask like about it. I always say the same thing, fail to plan, plan to fail. And I know
Yeah.
that's not a me thing, but it always resonated.
Well,
Well,
this red notebook is one ongoing to-do list. This is a year-long to-do list. So you wake up in the morning or before bed and you make the list and you wake up and you start checking shit off.
Greg is our
Not
auction expert, and I know he is chomping at the bit to get to some of these car
okay,
questions that
sure,
we've
let's
written
go.
for you.
How
And
I am.
we've tried to make these fun and exciting. And I'm going to start out by asking a question that we had from actually, Paul, I think you do know this guy. And I did go to his Instagram, and he does have a massive collection of some of the coolest cars you could possibly ever hope to own. So here's this message, and I'll just read this to you guys, and we can handle this right away. Hello, chaps. Is he British, by the way, Paul, the guy you're
Yes.
thinking of?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
He
there you go.
is.
That makes sense. All right. Hey, hello, chaps. Just finished your greatest sports car episode. Thanks again for your thoroughly entertaining listen. In response to your request for questions or ideas, I have a conundrum. What does a car enthusiast and collector get his 16-year-old son as his first car? Lots to consider. First and foremost is safety, which some may argue eliminates anything vintage or say older, or is there a sweet spot and in between reliable safe vehicle to whet his appetite for classic cars, or is there something modern that might be a gateway drug into the enthusiast world? So, Greg, you want to go with that one first? Your suggested first car. You can go last if you'd like. It's up to you.
I'll go last. How about I go last?
Okay. So, Paul, I thought about this a lot, actually. Julie and I talked about this one. Oh man, you guys did not prepare.
No, well, actually, no, I was thinking about this because I have a daughter, went through this conundrum. Now, first off, my daughter could give to whatever about a car. She got a 2008 Honda hybrid Civic, which is the most wretched mobile. And now that she's been driving it for 8 years, she realizes it is a POS. And I remember, I think, Matt, you dealt with this a little bit with your nephew. I see too many of my clients kind of on the same thing. Like they have a baby. Oh, we got to get the SUV. I have a child. I got to get the safest thing. A Volvo can't have an old car. I think more importantly is teaching your new driver how to drive, not how to obey road signs, but how to actually drive. And so I've always felt like, yes, get a safe car to some degree. It can be vintage, but it really depends how it aligns with who the buyer is or who that your kid is, what they want. Buying an old Mercedes diesel, might not be a bad way to do it, or buying them a 5-year-old, CPO, whatever Hyundai could be the answer. But Matt, I know you dealt this with your nephew. What was up with that?
I don't think there's this. Notwithstanding that, I don't understand what is available in the UK specifically.
No, he's here.
But
He's
Oh,
stateside.
okay.
He's here. He's just a British
Great.
expat.
Yeah.
Great. The answer is Subaru XV Crosstrek manual. Game over. 165 horsepower, manual gearbox, all-wheel drive, simple, mechanical, very safe.
Good pick.
Solved. Everybody loves the Crosstrek. Everybody.
Matt actually picked my choice.
Oh, really? There we go.
No, it wasn't my choice. That is a great choice, though.
Oh,
Yours would be a 250 Lusso or something,
No,
Greg.
yeah.
This would
No.
be his GTO. Watch.
No. I was going to go with like some, a manual Japanese car, about 15 years old, low mileage, something kind of fun. Nothing crazy. You got some of the safety stuff on it, but it's still cool.
So if you guys are choosing a car for your son, and he's going to be driving, I think he lives in Texas, doesn't he, Paul, this fella?
Yeah, he lives in Houston.
Okay, well, I've driven in Houston, and there's some absolutely the most insane drivers I've ever experienced in my life, including where I live now. Just an absolute batshit crazy soup of insanity. All right, so with that in mind, why not go for what is arguably, and Matt, you're going to have to forgive me for saying this. You know where I'm going with this, I can tell. Why don't you go with what's arguably the safest car on the road, which is the Tesla Model S? And I know, electric car, yuck.
No one should ever buy a child a car that fast.
The P85.
It
Do
doesn't
you know
matter.
how fucking fast that car is for a 16-year-old kid?
It's a
It's
used
like a
battery.
400 horsepower car.
The battery's half
Instant
shot.
torque.
The battery's half shot.
Out of here with
I had a
that.
client, for all of his kids, and they had like 4 girls, and they were all car kids. They all loved cars. They grew up with his dad. They all had to be under 200 horsepower, had to be a manual transmission, and he would intentionally remove the radio or any way to plug in a phone. There was no DC charger, and he gave him a Thomas guide, and he said, that's what you're going to use for 12 months.
I mean, that's pretty cool. Like that. I mean, taking away the aux, like that's pretty cold.
Sting to yourself.
But I'm 100% pro. A basic slow manual transmission car. It could be new like a Subaru or old like a Civic or something. But like, yeah, that's where I'm at.
What was your
Feel
first,
the road.
what was your first car, Matt?
My first car. So it depends where you want to. If you could see my security cameras, which are above my desk, a white Subaru Crosstrek just pulled into the driveway. It is a sign.
Sponsored by
I
Subaru.
sort of worked my way into it. I learned to drive on my mom's Mercury Villager Nautica Edition, the best minivan of all time. And my dad, 9 Deuce Lexus LS 400, the best sedan of all time.
Definitely.
And so I learned to drive on those. And then my dad, when he got a new car, I had been driving about a year, 6 months. He sold me that Lexus for a half market price, whatever it was. I had to work. I got a job starting when I was 14. My parents were very well off, but they insisted, if you want a car, you're gonna pay half. So that was the deal. Whatever I could save, they would match me. So with the Lexus, rather than that, they sold me the car for half of whatever market value was. So that was their equivalent. So I had this Lexus LS 400. I drove for like 6 months. And then I was like, this isn't like not me. I wanted a manual car. That was more fun. So I got a Subaru Legacy GT. I had that for about a year. But before the WRX came out, this was in like 98. Before the WRX came out, there was no aftermarket in America for Subarus. And so I couldn't modify it. All my friends had Mustangs. I then sold the Subaru and got a 94 Mustang GT, which I turned into like a Cobra R clone. With the Cobra R nose, hood, and we did a 347 stroker motor. The Mustang was way cheaper than the Subaru, so I got a bunch of cash back, which we put into the Mustang. And then my 5 best friends all had a car club in high school. We all had Mustangs. Everyone had a Fox body, but my mom insisted I get airbags. So I got the 94 Mustang, which was the first of the SN95. It was still a Fox body underneath. So our friend Jimmy, who did all the wrenching on the Fox bodies, he could work on my car too, just like he worked on, and then we did the 303 cam and all the heads, and then it was like a stroker. I mean, it was a whole thing. So I drove all those cars before my 17th birthday.
What's your
That's a lot for 1 year of high school. That's a lot of cars.
I
I
thought
just
you were
went
talking
through my
about
whole
like
car
into
history.
college.
No,
yeah?
I
What
just went through my whole car history for my nephew, and I've owned 48 cars, and I'm 43 years old, and I'm not like a car dealer by trade. That's like a pretty good number of cars.
what's
Yeah.
your ultimate Fox body?
Kind of the one I had actually, which was it was a 88 notchback former highway patrol car that I took to Maximum Motorsports, and we put a 2004 Terminator Cobra chassis under it. So it had independent rear suspension, and it had the '03 Cobra front suspension with all that architecture, and it was a wide body. I mean, it was just Celine air dam. It was absolutely gorgeous. I had it for a couple of years, but it had like a 302 based engine in it, and I made it handle so well that it felt really slow. The engine was to get the engine to where that car would have needed to be, it would have had to be probably a Voodoo engine that I would have had to buy out of a Shelby or something. And now you're at $30,000-$40,000, and I started driving Porsches, and I went, when I had a Mustang back in the day, I would have chosen the Porsche too.
And
Yeah.
you sold that on Bring a Trailer, right? A couple
I
years
sold
ago.
it on Bring a Trailer. We did set a record for a non-Cobra R Fox body, but it also it was sort of a cheat because I gave half the money to charity. So it went for 66,000, and then I gave 33,000 to an animal shelter. I paid their rent for a year,
That's
which
awesome.
was fun. Yeah.
So we kind of experienced the same thing. We both loved Mustangs, and then we drove a Porsche.
Yeah.
Do you recommend Mustang people stay away from Porsches so they still live in their dreamland?
No, it's like what are your priorities? Like, there's people of all ages whose priorities are one thing versus another, right? And I grew up with these Mustangs, and then as an adult, I sort of built a Mustang that I thought was more present in that era, with sort of what they're doing with cars today. And in hindsight, if I didn't sell it because I wanted to. When I was building this place, it was because I ran out of room for cars. I had to sell 4 cars within a couple of months. I also had to sell my R32 Skyline, which I really also miss, and a couple other cars. But I probably could buy it back if I wanted. If I wanted to, eventually, maybe one day I would like to have another Mustang. There's a couple things I would do differently, and I think I'd nail it the third time.
When you say that's usually what happens. Would you
Yeah.
build another car, or would you buy the actual Cobra R or something more
I
significant?
wouldn't
or
buy a
say, like,
Cobra R, but I might buy a really nice Celine or something like that. I do prefer the notchback to the hatchback. I'm a really big notchback guy, and so I probably would like to have another notchback, but I love the notchback because it is of all Mustangs ever built, it is the smallest, lightest one. And when you
Yep.
drive it, it's hilarious because you're in a muscle car, but it's a tiny muscle car.
Yeah.
These are like little cars, and so I just love that. I love the sound.
You
You
and
met-
oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Tim.
No, I was going to say you mentioned that you had a GT-R, and we had another question, actually several questions. People were getting sick of us, mostly Paul, talking too much about 911s, and so they're wanting to know what we feel would be a good blue chip sports car, Japanese sports cars. If you don't like the word blue chip, we can interchange that with something else. But Japanese cars,
Skylines are it. I mean, entire importation businesses are built on Skylines, and so if you want a truly blue chip it's a small group, right? You've got your RX-7, you've got your Supra, you've got your Skyline, and then you've got, kind of everything else. Um, but the premium Japanese car of all time is the R34 Skyline and those special sub variants. And Paul, have you driven one? Have you driven
I
R34?
sold an R34 in 2010. That was
Yeah.
one of the 7 or 10 factory Nismo cars that run the Suzuka 1000.
So
And
was it a show and display? Is that why you had it in 2010? Or was
Symbolic
it
got it.
shady?
It
All
mm,
right. He took a breath. He was
yeah,
like, "Yay."
it came into the US to be at first Speed World Challenge car.
Uh-huh.
And the car was too important. And everyone says that's not the idea. So his backup idea was prepare for the 25-hour Thunder Hill, which fortunately there was an intervention because I've done that race 4 times. And basically, it's not if, it's when you will get punched and you will get hit.
Yeah.
And that car was too valuable. And basically, and you'll love this, Matt. My client, sweet guy, he had to buy. He didn't want that car. He wanted a Ken Mary GT-R. And
Hmm.
Symbolic twisted his arm, and he had to buy both to get the Ken Mary GT-R. So he got this R34. He had no idea what it
And
was.
wait, this R34 was a race car? It wasn't a street car?
It was a race car.
Oh, okay.
And I
Right.
remember when, yeah, and it was, like I said, it won the Suzuka 1000. It was an important race car. And
Yeah.
so his idea of legally driving, he lived here in Southern California, was he went to the DMV and bought a stack of 30 one-way permits. He would just
I
fill
don't
it
think
out.
you are. How do you do that? You got to grease somebody to do that.
No,
They
no,
won't just
you
give you
can go in there.
31.
You can go into the DMV and you
You
can
can?
buy, we buy like 20 at a time, even though it's not
How
necessary
much
to,
are they?
they're like $30 each.
Oh, shit. Really?
Mhm. Now,
You guys have to explain for those of us not
Hell
in
yeah.
California.
now
For those
here's
of us
Hold on a
not in
minute.
California,
Let me grab a pen. This is in
Yes.
California. We are
It's
in
in
California.
California
He's
DMV.
describing something that is fully legal.
but what are you guys talking about? I don't
Okay.
know.
Okay,
So-
all right. So
You
go
explain
ahead,
it,
Paul.
Matt.
Explain.
No,
All
Matt,
right,
you explain it.
a one-trip permit. This is gold, my friend. You got a car, it's got no tags, and you're not a dealer. What do? You got to get it somewhere. You get a one-trip permit. They can be issued by dealers and issued by the DMV. I've never seen anybody have more than one at a time, but it's one trip, not one day,
Yep.
not 1 mile, one trip.
Right.
And the definition of the word trip is up to you.
Oh my
Well,
gosh.
it said there's 2 boxes on there. One says one-way permit, one trip, one way going out, or
Right.
a up to 30-day continuous round trip, like you're taking it to a
Oh, right.
mechanic
Okay.
and
Yeah,
taking
yeah.
it back. So his
Yeah.
idea of legality was he would stick this in the window. He had, he figured he would go to Cars and Coffee once a month with it, which he did.
Yeah.
And then he would come home, and that's how, or he had to take it to the mechanic. And he did this for 2 years. Every year he would go in and buy another stack of, a couple
That's
dozen.
amazing.
And
And then the FBI showed up.
no, and then but the whole thing about it was, and I've had we buy 20 of them. So like when we sell a car and someone wants to drive it out of state, even though I don't recommend they do it, we collect the sales tax, do all the DMV stuff, but they don't understand we have personal plates. Like they do not go with the car. The person keeps the personal plates. So they don't have anything. Now, if they're out of state and they can register it ahead of time, I strongly encourage them to do it. So they show up with plates. But in the case they don't, I try to explain to them that if they get pulled over, and by the way, like you always say, Matt, commit one crime at a time. If you get pulled over,
anybody can get away with one crime at a time.
just
The dumbest person in the world.
You speak like someone who used to deal drugs, by the way, sometimes, Matt.
Listen, I did the duffel shuffle for 4 years. I understand how it goes. If you are doing only one crime, the odds of you getting caught are so small.
yes, but they go up
as to be
exponentially.
non-existent. Yes, with the number of crimes you stack, and anyone who gets arrested for anything, it's because they were stacking crimes.
Exactly. And I've told the people who drive, I said, if I were you, you're doing this completely legal. You've got all the paperwork. If you get pulled over, here's all the stuff. But by the way, you should be hyper vigilant about obeying every traffic law you can. Now, the asterisk to this is, of all the ones I've gone, and like, I'll send my nephew to the DMV and go get 20 of them, and we just park them in our thing. And it's more of just to make the buyer feel safe that they've got something legal on the windshield when technically they don't need it.
Yeah.
But I've never had anyone pulled over or questioned with those.
I've
So,
used one before. Before I
you-
became a dealer, I have presented a one-trip permit to a cop before,
how did that
and
go?
it just fine, as intended.
Perfect.
So hypothetically, somebody could buy a car, keep it in California, just do these things over and over again, never have to register or pay a sales
No,
tax?
that's not legal. What he's
That's-
describing is illegal, but he did it. He's describing a guy that did a racket in order to drive an unregisterable race car
Exactly.
on the street in California.
Exactly.
He wasn't evading taxes. There was no legal way to do this.
Yeah, that was no show and
Not
display.
only was it a race car, it was a non-25-year-old
Yeah.
imported Japanese car.
Off-road use only.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's like 7 ways you can't drive that on the street.
And ultimately, he sold it because every time he
Yeah.
saw, I mean, you'd love this, Matt. His wife was so nervous about him driving it, she
Yeah.
would make him wear a blood pressure cuff. And when he would see
That's
a cop,
hilarious.
he would actually get like 150 over 100.
God,
She's
do
like,
I
you're
love
going to have a
that.
heart attack.
Well, because he was doing it's so one crime at a time doesn't apply if you do that crime over and over for 2 years.
Yeah. Yes.
One crime in repetition negates one crime at a time.
But I got to say, and I saw it yesterday at Scott's in Malibu, it's better than putting California plates that don't belong on the car on the car. And I saw that yesterday.
Oh yeah, that's bad.
It was,
yeah, don't do
and it was
that.
a friend of mine. I was like, oh, dude, like no plates is better than the wrong plates.
I did that once, and I won't tell you where or when, but let's just say it was a one-way trip for that car. It didn't come back.
Poor car.
But anyway, so wait, to circle back, you haven't actually properly driven an R34 Skyline road
I
car
did.
on the street.
I drove
Yeah.
that car. I hung my
Okay,
dealer
no,
plate.
but a road car.
Oh, no. I've
Yeah.
driven one R32 briefly.
Yeah.
And then the R34, I drove it to Cars and Coffee, Irvine in 2010. And when I parked it, talk about flies on shit.
Well, in 2010,
Mom.
certainly, yeah, that would have been a dude magnet for sure.
And you would have loved
Um,
it. Every control had Dyma-tape like a race car to tell you what
Uh-huh.
it did in
Yeah.
Japanese.
yeah.
I had no freaking clue how to turn that
That's
car.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, no, those to drive one of those, have a good drive in a 30. I mean, and look, the 32 and the 33 are, the 32 is 80% of a 34, and the 33 kind of splits the difference, although it's a longer car. That's a fabulous experience. It doesn't, even at $150,000, $200,000, that is not a disappointing driving experience. I think that's one of the greats. For someone my age, I was just at Scott's, Paul, last weekend in Malibu, talking to an incredibly blue chip collector, whose name I'll use because he's a public guy, Todd Blue. You know him, Paul. All his cars, you know him, Tim. He's a lovely man. in Malibu.
Greg and I were just at an auction where Todd was selling off a lot of his cars, and Greg took
Oh
me
yeah,
through it. All of them.
Yeah, he did. We were talking about that, but he was asking me about skylines and roofs and why skylines and roofs were so. And I go, dude, you're like 10 years too old. I grew up playing Gran Turismo. There were no Porsches in Gran Turismo. They didn't have the license. If you're beating people in Gran Turismo in a Porsche, it's in a roof. In when we were racing in these video games back in the day, we used to have a rule: no skylines.
No skylines.
I'll race you Nürburgring 3-lap battle, no skylines.
Skylines.
The car was so good, you couldn't use it in a fucking video game. So to then go out, and we assumed in America, we were like, oh yeah, of course, if the game was made in Japan, so they made the almighty Godzilla, the like fucking unbeatable, supercar. And then I go to Japan at the Hakone Turnpike, and I drive an R34 Skyline, and I go, they weren't kidding. It's better. It's better. I've driven every single possible awesome car that was built in 1989. The R32 Skyline is so much better than all of them. It's laughable. It's laughable. The R32 Skyline drives like a Porsche 959, and it was a tenth of the price new. It's
Wow.
crazy. Yeah,
That's
yeah. These are very, very special things.
well,
And
so since you brought that up, what's the R34 in terms of like a driving experience? Because now you have me totally curious about this.
so it feels like the inline six is just incredibly slick. It almost is similar to what BMW did 15 years later with the N54 and N55, but it's a much older architecture. And that smoothness and its strength, it's so powerful. 34s make a lot of power and they are not that heavy. And they have a ton of grip and they have a ton of technology, but because they're manual gearbox with hydraulic steering, they still feel incredibly analog compared to the truly modern stuff. But you could drive around a 34 Skyline daily, the same way people might drive around a 997 Porsche every day. And it is a relaxing and usable experience with a real trunk and a real back seat and comfortable seats and good air conditioning. And then it's not just that they're fast, it's how smooth and refined they are, which is shocking um, compared to a Testarossa or a Countach or a 930 Turbo or what anybody else was selling that year. It's so far beyond it. The 959 is the only thing that's even close, and it was 6 times the price or something when it was new. Forget now.
Aren't the R34s, Greg? This is more of, so maybe you have this information out there already. Wasn't there recently an R34 GT-R that sold for $1 million?
It might have been touched by Paul Walker. That usually makes them 7-figure cars.
I
If
think it
Paul
was an
farted
RM
in the
auction
seat,
actually too. Yeah.
if
No,
Paul farted in the
yeah.
seat, it's 7 figures. Yeah. What do you got?
No, I don't. I'll look it up, but I don't think that was us. Yeah, that'd be amazing if it did hit that. I'll check.
But I mean,
As
Matt,
far as I know, the only ones that have cracked $1 million are Paul Walker related, and south of that, some of the more special, limited edition ones are 400 to 500 grand. But I think you could get a great one in a great color, highly collectible, uh, stock or either very tastefully and lightly modified. I think 250 gets you a real banger, which is a ton of money, but they're still showstoppers, even though now they're importable. Everyone loves a Skyline.
R34 or your 718? What would you choose?
Oh, I mean, my 718 probably. I think I love mid-engine cars and it's California. I love Spyders. I think and I think my car specifically with a bored and stroked hot rod racing engine represents the sort of SoCal vibe. All in one car. It's that old school hot rodding applied to and candy kind of paint and crazy colors, but applied to water-cooled Porsches, which are just so popular here.
I mean, actually, more like you mentioned with the video game, not money involved, not in terms of maintenance involved. Would you rather have that Gran Turismo Skyline or the Gran Turismo roof?
I've driven Bruce Meyer's Yellowbird. It is extraordinary. That car is absolutely, that is an extremely special car. It's crazy how many of those, I think they only made like 11 or something of those. And I personally know 4 people who own them in the city, which is like a wild thing to say. But it was so much different than everything else, even different from the 959. Why when I say the Skyline is sort of like the 959, it's that sort of one turbo then the other, the small turbo that then hands off to the big one. Whereas the roof was twins, and they were doing twins 9 years before Porsche was doing twins. And so it almost feels like a very narrow body car, but with like a 993 turbo engine in it, which is just a wild, nasty thing. And Porsche is all about little differences, right? It's all about this. Oh, well, this one's the lightweight, and they took 50 kilos out, and that makes it 3 times the price or whatever. It's like with Rolex watches, it's all like little things that nobody can see that make the difference. And the Roof CTR is the king of the accumulation of a zillion tiny things.
I
Let's
found
talk
Make it
about
very,
that.
very
Hey,
special.
Tim, I
Yeah, go
found
ahead.
I found it.
The
So
sale?
it was sold in Hong Kong. R34 sold for $1 million Australian dollars.
Oh, so that's like
Oh,
150 US.
No, it's just over $600,000, but it had
Oh, okay.
zero miles on it, and it was the rare Midnight Purple 2. Beautiful
Mm.
car.
Yeah, it's a great color. Very rare
it's probably
color.
right-hand drive too. I bet you it was
They're
right-hand
all
drive.
Yeah.
right-hand drive.
Oh,
And
are
you know what
they?
the rare-
Interesting.
All Skylines
They're
are
all
right-hand
right-hand drive.
drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what the rarest Skyline color is? It's not what you'd think.
White.
GTR. GTRs only.
I would guess
Probably 'cause-
that some form of that purple color, but it's called something else. And the 32s.
I was going to say
Just
red,
red.
actually.
Just red.
Was
Yeah.
that a
If you ever
Japanese
see
thing?
a factory red Skyline, it's just a very rare thing. I don't remember why it was that, but I actually think the take rate was just really low. But yeah, it
but
was red.
culturally, sometimes they'll do things, like the famous thing with the MGM building the entrance on the wrong side.
Right.
It might be something along the lines of maybe it's to national pride. It's part of our flag. Can't have that
I
color.
don't know. I mean, it's not like that's the case with like other colors. There's a million red Supras. There's a million red
Yeah.
Celicas. I don't red Camrys all over the place. I don't think there's a particular thing against red. Also, I mean, I don't know. It may have been Nissan, by the time they got to the R34, they had like no money. They were in deep shit financially. And so they may have just, I don't know, maybe it was like, too expensive to offer that as a color or
Well, they
something.
had
I
a
don't
shit ton of Sentra to make, and they were all silver and gray. So what the hell?
Yeah. Right.
Well, so
So
you mentioned roofs, and I think it's actually we were genuinely curious to this. I've tried to bring this up occasionally to different people to see what they have to say.
Hmm.
There is an onslaught of resto mods. We can use Singer as sort of the benchmark, and
Sure.
I've seen these trends where going back to the 80s when I was a kid, and you were even more of a kid. There was a whole bunch of resto rod Porsches and whatnot, but now we see all these resto rods, and I'm just sort of curious: is that a
Tim, come back.
Oh no. Do you want to finish his question, Paul? I'm curious. Is that
I think
Tim, you chopped out. You're
you hear me?
curious. Is that yeah, I hear you now. Finish
Okay,
the question.
sorry.
You went away.
Sorry. Yeah, well, again, that's internet for you. So anyway,
Okay.
I was asking, what do you think? Are these resto mods specifically? Let's just keep it to 911 since we were just talking about roof. What's the future of those things 20 years from now? Because a lot of the singers, the classic singers in particular, are very specific to. So what's are people 20 years from now going to be buying those? What's the market? What would you perceive?
I don't know about 20 years. I don't like to make future predictions. But I mean, look, people were buying brand name coach built style tuner cars 30, 40, 50 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. So I don't see, especially as our future marches towards electrification, if maybe a little more slowly this year than last year. But we still have, aerodynamics and efficiency and modern safety features to take into account. So Porsche would love to be able to re-release a 930 under, knowing what they know now, but building a car like that or something, but they clearly can't for a variety of reasons. How convenient for Singer and for Gunther Works. And yes, there's legal things they have to step around because they're starting with existing cars, but I don't know about 20 years, but I was just at Singer last week. I went to go visit them in Torrance in preparation for reviewing their new turbo car, which I'm driving next week. And I've actually already driven, but I drove it on the track. I drove a friend's car, and I'm driving their car on the road for a video. Anyway, there were a lot of cars there. A lot. They
Yep.
were building a lot of cars, and those cars are very expensive. And among many things they told me were that a lot of people will buy secondhand Singers from auctions or from wherever. And because they're so personal to the first owner, they'll just ship them back to Singer and have them redone. And I was talking to Maz, and Maz was like, "This is stupid. Just like we'll put you on the list. You're gonna have to wait a little bit, but like if that was what you wanted, like we could find a way to build you a car." Um, but people are apparently not bothered to buy a Singer that might be not the color or the interior they want and spend another couple $100,000 having it refitted the same way people would do with a yacht or a jet. I mean, these are the same people. You know, they're that's not a, like I said, money isn't an object. If they perceive that buying this car today and shipping it back to have the interior change from white to blue, well, that'll take 6 months versus buying a new car might take 5 years. Well, okay, and they'll go round and round.
Pagani
And
does
because
that
they're,
too.
huh?
So
Pagani does that too.
Yep, Pagani does it too. Yeah.
Yep.
Matt, can you verify or dispute? My understanding is that a venture capitalist firm bought into Singer, but they also bought into Revology. Is that true? And do you think the pressure from the VC for profits will impact quality of the build or pricing or whatever?
I don't know. I'm not sure if I did know, I would be allowed to say,
It's
or
public
I,
information. It's
all right,
public
well then
information.
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. My head is full of a lot of things. As Paul pointed out, I'm like pretty busy. And so I don't necessarily study the inner workings of behind the scenes at some of these companies. I typically focus on the product, and what the cars are like and how they drive, and that's sort of my lane. Um, Full disclosure, and maybe Tim saw when he was here or Paul when he was here, we store Revology's marketing cars here.
Believe it or
So,
not, Matt, I've only been to your
oh,
South Bay location. Have not been to your
oh, well, you
flagship.
should come by.
I do want to.
And I brought that Revology car actually out to Johnny's car show yesterday for funsies, and nobody noticed me. It was like me being Clark Kent. It was actually very funny. Nobody expects me in a Shelby, but point being, their turbo car that Singer is building now. I drove it, and while I have a full review coming, what really impressed me about the car that I did drive, which was a customer car with 400 miles on it, was that unlike any other quote resto mod I've ever driven, and there's a lot of them, this car showed absolutely no evidence at all that there was any car there before. This was a brand new car. Even the classic Singers, two of which have been delivered straight to the shop here, there was a car there before. You can just sort of feel it. With this new car, you cannot. Part of the other goal was building them much more cost effective than the classic cars, which there are apparently many efficiencies in the process, as well as this new giant factory they have, and judging by how many they have going on at once right now, compared to when I was at the other place in Sun Valley and they had like 4 cars going on at a time, obviously they will be able to build more cars in less time and in a more cost-effective way. In my opinion, the quality of the turbo car is very high. So if we're judging classic versus turbo and saying, has the VC seep into the product? In my short experience with the turbo car, the answer is no. The build quality is extraordinary, and
Paul,
in many ways is better than the older car.
Paul and Greg have appointments to go to, but before Paul wraps, I wanted to say, give you a little free commercial, because the experience that Julie and I had from soup to nuts with dealing with you for storing a car with you for Car Week last year, we're going to do it again this year, was extraordinary. And I don't think there's a few parallels I've had to the level of service, but it is, everywhere. They picked us up at the airport in a black car, and they took us to, the whole thing was just really exceptional, and never any kickback, never any pushback. You want the car shipped back to your place in North Carolina? No problem. And it arrived. You must have some sort of sweetheart deal with Roadway or whatever it is, because it showed up like a freaking week. Normally, I had to wait a month just to book the damn thing. So the whole experience was just exceptional. So if you are looking for any storage in California, you've got 2 locations, and I know you want to build 2 more. You absolutely positively have no hard decision to make. Just use Matt. That's the bottom line.
Thank you very much, Tim. That's very kind of you. Yeah. WCCS.com.
Greg, you want to say one more thing?
Yeah, just two really quick things. I couldn't get it in earlier, but I did have a cool drive in a 575 this week to Katie's Cars and Coffee outside of DC through horse country in Virginia, which is really cool. But the cooler thing was the car that followed us in was the 1960 Corvette that won its class at Sebring, showing up to a Cars and Coffee at 6 o'clock in the
That's
morning.
cool.
So that was really cool. Other thing I just wanted to say, put it on your radar. We won't know the sale price, but in Europe, Sotheby's, this is a really ballsy move. They're consigning no reserve 6 delivery mile Porsches, including the delivery truck. And they're all like crazy. They're all, I mean,
Like they're all like loaded on a transporter, and you get the transporter.
What
too.
year,
you get the
Paul? Or Greg?
transporter.
Greg, what vintage Porsches are these?
So 2016 911R, and then every other one is a 991.2 GT3 Cup, GT3 Cup R, GT3, GT3 RS Visoc, GT3 Touring, and you get the truck, and it's no reserve. And I
Like
thought this
is
was
it
like
a newer? Is it a newer transport?
Are you worried about the transport? Really?
Yeah, I was just
2019.
thinking that. Paul asked about the truck.
I'm
I mean,
gonna
that
make a
sounds kinda
prediction. The seller
That's
takes a
ballsy.
huge bath on this.
It's ballsy.
That's my prediction. The seller takes an enormous bath on this.
Yeah.
We'll
that's
see.
that's
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it when I saw it come through. I'm like, wow, that's
Well, we'll talk
interesting.
about that in the next
Yep.
show. That's great.
I
Well-
bet, is there like an asterisk on the listing that's like must have hauler out of here 15 minutes after auction ends? Like,
Yeah.
must go today.
Yeah. Liquidation sale. Everything must go.
Everything
you
must
know,
go.
Matt, I
Yeah.
speaking on behalf of all of us here at Full Throttle Talk, I really appreciate you doing this. I know how busy you are. It is truly an honor. I know for folks like Tim, I started off in the car storage business. I realized it is a tough job to do right. So now when my clients want me just to store for free until August when they can go to Monterey Car Week, I just tell them I am not your guy.
They buy the car in January and they're like, yeah, I'll pick it up in August. You're like,
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. They add it to the contract after I've signed it. Yeah. But it is a pleasure to be able to refer some of my particular clients to someone I know that can handle their particular needs. And it's a relief. And I know besides Westside Collector Car Storage, obviously, your Instagram, the Smoking Tire, YouTube channels, and Smoking Tire podcast. I tell people you
Everything
have to
the
subscribe.
Smoking Tire.
Yeah, or Smoking Tire podcast. Subscribe to both. It helps.
Episode 1000 this weekend.
I can't
Wow.
wait to listen to it.
Congratulations.
Episode
And
1000.
go to his Patreon. I'm a member of his Patreon. You do get cool content, and and like Matt said, we want the content. You got to support it. It's not going to be here forever. But Matt,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Patreon is good. Patreon is that's what's up. I'm all
Yep.
about that. Thanks,
and,
guys. Have a
I'll
good
see you
rest
on
of
the
your
I'll
day.
see you on the hill.
I'll see
Thank
you
you,
on the
Matt.
hill, Paul.
See you guys later.
Not Friday, but next week. Have a
Sounds
good
good.
day,
Thanks, Matt.
guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
Bye.